What is going on, guys? The real KJ3 here. Today I have an AMD Radeon 6450 graphics card that I bought on eBay for $20. To give a quick rundown of the card, it is a PCIe X16 graphics card with 1GB of video memory. The 6450 only offers two different outputs. It offers to DVI and DisplayPort connection. And today I'm going to see how well it games in 2019. This card will be going in my 1996 compact Presario, running Windows 98 and a Pentium 2 processor and 64MB of RAM. Just kidding. This is actually my sleeper computer. I'll be doing a whole other video on this, but this is actually going to be paired with an AMD Athlon dual-core 2.4GHz AM4 CPU and 8GB of Corsair Vengeance DDR4 RAM. The card I have in this right now is an EVGA GT-730 2GB graphics card. I haven't done any gaming on this, and will use it as my backup if the 6450 fails. So, now it's time to remove the card and put in the 6450. Alrighty, out came the GT-730 and in went the 6450. I'm going to plug in the monitor through the DVI port and give it the first boot. Let's see what happens. It'd probably help if I set the monitor to DVI input so I could actually see what's happening, but that seemed too easy to me until I tried it. It then booted just fine, and I was on the hunt for drivers because when I purchased the card, it didn't come with the driver CD. As you can see here, Windows is using the basic Microsoft Display Adapter driver because the card is unknown until a driver is found, and that's to be expected. I went to AMD and downloaded the correct drivers and the Catalyst software, and now it was installation time. So the installation had completed, and I went to go change the resolution of my monitor and saw that it was still the same resolutions as before. I then checked to see if the driver had actually installed correctly, and the computer was not detecting anything had changed, and it was still using the basic display adapter driver even though it said everything had installed correctly. I tried searching for the drivers through Microsoft, but like always, it didn't help. I then tried finding the drivers manually through the files, and nothing came to surface, unfortunately. I then downloaded different drivers through Dell's website, being that the card was OEM through Dell, but I ran into a compatibility issue being Windows 10 was too new for the driver it was trying to install. I tried running the driver install program through Dell, and it would install, but nothing would happen afterwards. I then tried running the Catalyst software I installed previously, but was presented with this error saying that the graphics driver is not installed. I thought to myself, maybe if I ran the other installer in Windows 7 compatibility mode, it might work. And I got a lot farther this time. Alrighty, so once that install was complete, I got presented with the same error message as before saying that no ATI graphics driver was installed. So, it's time to shut it down and go to our backup plan, the GT-730 2GB graphics card. So, I unplug my monitor, and out goes the 6450, and back in goes the GT-730. Alrighty, let's get the monitor plugged back in. I already have the drivers installed on this machine, so it should be a lot quicker and we can actually game and get some results on this. Alrighty, so the first game I want to test out is one I don't hear much about. It's called Superhot. It isn't the most graphically demanding game, but it isn't lightweight either. I'm going to be running this on default settings, which is high, and see how it performs. So first things first, it looks to be running about roughly 30 to 40 frames from least to most. When things start moving around a lot more, it does run rather smoothly, but it stays around 34 to about 36 frames a second, as you can see there. Mostly dropping to about 30 when things get really fast and there are more things on the screen, but it's definitely playable though. As you can see here, when things get into real time, you steady at about 30 to 35 frames a second. Mostly in between 30 and 33, but again, still definitely playable. The next game on the test is Counter-Strike Global Offense. Again, this will be ran on default settings the first time, but this time, compared to Superhot, I'm actually going to take it down to medium and then low to see how better we get with our FPS and workload on the CPU and the GPU. So starting out, we seem to be looking at about 30 to 40 frames a second depending on where you are in the map and how many objects are on the screen. If you're in a rural area of the map, you'll stay in the mid to upper 30 frames per second range, and if you have a lot going on the screen, you'll drop to the lower 30. Again, still playable though on high settings. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it down to medium settings and see how well it performs then. So with it on medium settings, we seem to have it up by about 10 frames per second, staying around the 40 to 50 FPS range. Now I'm going to take it down to low and see how well it performs then. So when you start out at about 50 frames a second, and then you can go all the way up to about 60 to 65. It stays about 55 to 60, even when there's a lot of things happening on the screen. It still looks good and is definitely a lot more playable. The next test I wanted to give it was an emulator test. I first tried EPSXE with the Pizza OpenGL plugin, and it stayed at a steady 30 FPS frame rate with very little frame drop or lag, with the frame drop only being 1 or 2 or none at all. The next emulator test was Project 64 with ultra high graphics quality. For some reason my frame rate overlay would not show up no matter what I did, but the gameplay was incredibly smooth and looked fantastic for games of that age. I was going to try a PlayStation 2 emulator, but I lost my network connection during a downloading of a game, but I have all confidence that with the right plugin, it would have ran just fine at 30 to 60 frames depending on the game. For some reason, it didn't dawn on me to add more players to the testing game, but I'm, again, confident it would have ran just fine no matter how many objects were on the screen with the advanced texture quality plugin. So that raises the question, is it possible to game on a cheap 2GB graphics card in 2019? Of course. With the right games you can. It's not like you're going to run Black Ops 4 at max settings, but you can still run a few newer and popular titles on low or medium settings depending on the title. Yes, you can still play your PUBG, yes, you can still play your Fortnite. I don't think you're going to be able to get away with streaming on Twitch, but a man can dream. So, that'll do it for this video, guys. I hope you guys learned a thing or two and enjoyed. If you did, leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. We will catch you guys in the next video. Peace out.